have a special guest on my show. We're talking to Louise Diamond, and I've been teasing this for a while if you guys follow me on Instagram, because I've been so excited to talk to Louise about middle school kids. Hello, Louise. Welcome.
Hi, Cher. Thanks for having me.
I am so glad we were able to work this out. We're on opposite sides of the United States. I'm over here in California. You're over there in Florida doing the good work of school counseling. And I just feel as though it's been a while since I've had somebody on to talk about the unique age of middle school kids. And so I'm really excited about this conversation. Uh, Beforehand, I know you've been doing this work for so long. Tell me a little bit about how you got into counseling and what you're doing.
Okay, yes, this is my 33rd year as a school counselor. It's hard to believe. I actually took a year off after my second child, but I started in 1990, um, working in the public schools in South Florida. I worked as a counselor for 5 years in a public elementary school, and then I moved over to a public middle school for 6 years. And then after that, I took a year hiatus after my second baby was born. And then I started working in parochial school, where I've been for 22 years now, where I work with preschoolers all the way to eighth graders. So, which is kind of fun because I get to see them grow up. And I actually am now working with students whose parents used to be my students. So that's kind of fun. It's generational.
Oh,
Yeah. So, it's
that's
fun
so sweet.
for a long, long time. I also have two children
Yeah.
of my own. I have a son and a daughter who they're both young adults. They recently both graduated from college in the last couple of years. So and why I became a counselor, that's an interesting question. So most people have these great stories about how they had a very influential counselor. Used to be guidance counselors back then, that really helped them in school, but that really wasn't my case. I was just really interested in psychology. My bachelor's is in psychology and how the mind works and human behavior. And I was also interested in education and being part of that. And it was also attractive to me, to be honest, the hours and the summers off, and just having that sort of stable consistency in life. Um, and I was very interested in education, but I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to just be kind of in one classroom all day. I wanted more of the global approach, and I wasn't really interested in teaching the academic subjects. I was more interested in getting in their brains and talking to them about, making the choices they make and their feelings and emotions and things like that. Just kind of being able to get in their heads, get into students' heads, and instead of really and interacting instead of putting inputting. Um, so I got into this the role of a school counselor because I was really interested in being part of the educational process, but also being into the mental health part of it a little bit more, and the psychology of it. So that's why I became a school counselor. And like I said, I've been doing it since before we had computers. I had a typewriter and a legal pad and a pencil, and it's been a long time. So I've seen a huge evolution in education and with students.
Yeah. I mean, people are the same, but the onset of technology has changed how we approach the students. There's no doubt about it. And we can say, yeah, the basics are still the same. People are people, but it seems to me like same as you as I watched through the years that we need to approach kids differently because they're approaching their life differently, with their devices and things. So, and I'm very similar as you. I did teach for a while, and I felt like I wanted to be in a lot of places rather than just one classroom. You said that, like one classroom was fine, but I felt like when you're a school counselor, you get to be able to go into all these different environments and pull kids in. It's more of um I don't know, interactive. It's fun.
Exactly.
Someone asked me the other day, they're like, how do you stay so excited about your job? Like, you always seem so excited. And I thought, you don't know how this job keeps you on your toes. You don't really have time to not be excited. Like, every day is different. There's no time to be bored. Have you felt that same way?
Every day is different, and it is exciting. It's exhausting sometimes as well, both emotionally and physically, um,
Yeah.
because we're kind of always dealing with problems.
Hmm.
People don't come to us or want us to sit in on a conference because everything is going well. The kid is learning, everything's going great. There's no conflicts and there's no interesting family dynamics. So when we're included and when we're called and when parents call us, they're often in crisis mode and they may have already tried a few things and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I need the counselor now." So
Right.
we do deal with a lot of problems. That's kind of what we do. That's when we're called in, not when everything's
Yeah.
going well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it's interesting to utilize the solution focused approach like I have been, because I feel like if there is any burnout in the field, it's because people do get really worn out at the problems that come at them all the time. And I think that was probably the switch for me, is when I began to say, I'm looking at the problem through the lens of really believing that there's a solution. And it helped my mindset to be able to not feel bogged down by the problem, but to say, I'm really seeking out and then helping them illuminate a solution. Um, there's a lot of different things that how we look at it. And we're going to talk more about that as far as even with middle school kids, but how we approach the situation completely changes. Because I have run into counselors, they're just going through the motions, going, oh my gosh, another problem coming my way. But then sometimes you have those moments where you're like, you know what? I am changing the way they look at their problems. Have you had those moments?
Right. And I kind of look at it as we're trying to put all the pieces of a puzzle together. And I
Yeah.
had a teacher say to me, "Oh my gosh, Louise, I wouldn't want your job." And I'm thinking, gosh, I wouldn't want your job. I think that teachers have a very hard job, but, I think what she meant by that was I do get kind of the crisis and people call you when a student is having a meltdown or they're in tears in class or, they unfortunately wanna hurt themselves or they're doing something
Yeah.
hurt someone else and you know how that is, and, so we're not dealing with the good stuff all the time. But I do like the challenge of putting the pieces of the puzzle back together and getting in their heads. And a lot of times
Mhm.
people will say something, about a student like I don't know what's wrong with him. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna find out. you
You're
know,
like, "Yeah, I
like
love that."
you don't want to say that to a child. What's wrong with you? Um, that will not be good.
They'd
But I
answer you, "Nothing. Nothing is
right.
wrong with me."
Fine, and they would do that. But I like getting in their heads and asking those open-ended questions and challenging their thinking and that cognitive reframing that we do all the time. So um I find it as a challenge instead of as a negative.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, to be at one school for a long time, then you have the other side you talked about where you're able to literally watch kids grow up. I mean,
Mhm.
that's priceless. I those moments you're just like, oh, you know, they're just so sweet. But you honed in on the middle school years for your book, and that's really what's interesting to me because it was way back, I think, in episode this is episode 196, I think, and it was literally 100 like 32 the last time that we talked about middle school.
Okay.
And I had a middle school teacher come on because she was an epic teacher for my daughter during the when we were online. I was so impressed. When we all had to jump online, I was working in the other room, so I could hear all the teachers, and you knew right away the ones that, and I'm sitting here a counselor in the same district as my daughter is in. So I could hear whether the teachers were getting this online thing or not. And I brought her in because I could tell that she got the middle school mindset. She understood where they were at. They were laying in bed because they were uncomfortable turning on their microphone. They were uncomfortable with people seeing them in their home. And it was harder for other teachers to jump into where that middle schooler was. And I think that's what I love about how your book really begins. And what I'd like to talk to you about is how we look at our kids as they grow older into the middle school years. It really affects how much we enjoy them. And I just thought I'd love to just hear your perspective on all that.
Well, back when I was working in a public middle school many years ago, it was an inner city middle school. We had about 1,600 students, and there were three of us counselors. And I got a phone call from a mom who had a 13-year-old son in seventh grade. And I wrote about this in my book. She was basically saying she didn't like her son anymore. She couldn't stand to be in the same room with him. She, was basically in tears. I don't know what to do with him. And, then she's told me that this was when he was a baby, she was just in love with him. She couldn't take her eyes off of him. And now, 13 years later, she's in a situation where she just can't stand him. And she said, I love my son, but I don't like him anymore. So that got me thinking. At the time, I was a new mom. I was, I guess I was about 32 years old. And I had a son who was an infant or 1 years old. And I thought to myself, my gosh, how do you get this way? Because I was in the, in the infatuation point in my life with being a mother for the first time. And I thought, my gosh, how did this happen? So I started researching and reflecting on her story. And I realized a lot of it had to do with, the developmental changes in children that we all go through and our expectation as parents. So we have to have a change in our mindset. And, to this day, I have parents call me, usually of fifth graders, sixth graders, seventh graders, um, who call me and they just say, when is this going to end? When am I going to get my sweet baby back? When is this going to be over? And they'll say very desperate things. How am I going to get through this? And I don't know what to do anymore. And they're frustrated and they're at their wits' end. And I think a lot of it, I just sort of validate their feelings and hear them, because as counselors, we have to listen. We do a lot of listening before we do speaking, and just sort of validate their emotions and let them know parenting is hard, and raising middle school kids is hard, and we have to try not to take everything personally. So we have to change our way of thinking and our expectations, and kind of understand that when your child gets to be, and it's not exactly, you hit a certain birthday and it happens then for everyone, but usually around 12 years old, they're going to start talking back, and they're going to start you know, figuring out who they are and going through different phases, and expressing themselves in a different way. And they realize they don't want to be little moms and, little yous. They want to be themselves, and they're trying to figure that out, and they don't know yet. And that's okay. And they're not going to be obedient and, that comply with everything. They're going to have ideas of their own, and all that is okay. And if we can sort of embrace that, and instead of saying things like, you need to do what I say because I said so, which we may have done when they were younger, and that was okay. But when they get to be a certain age, we have to parent differently, and we have to have different expectations. And you've heard the expression, we have to pick our battles. That is true. But we also need to not let them disrespect us or do something that's going to hurt themselves or put them in a situation they're not ready for. So I don't mean that obviously that we should just let them do whatever they want because they're going to do it anyway. No, I don't think that at all. They are looking for us for guidance, and parenting, I think, is largely about modeling the appropriate behavior and not just telling them what to do. And instead of saying things like, this is what you should do, or I think you should do this, or why don't you become this, or, we have to reflect, and we have to validate who they are and understand sometimes they'll make these grandiose declarations, and then an hour later or 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, they're on to something different. So we can't overreact to everything they say. I go into a great detail about that in the book. But I really feel like it's a good time to let them figure out who they are. And I'm really, really into extracurricular activities in middle school, because when your children are little, we kind of put them in activities. We sign them up for ballet lessons or little league, or I know soccer is really popular, or things like that. And then they get to be 7, 8, 9, 10. They don't want to do it anymore. They want to do something else. So I do think it's good to let them explore who they are and let them figure that out, because if they tell you, I don't want to play soccer anymore, or I don't want to do karate anymore, that's okay. But I do think they need to channel their energy and have a passion. And the kids they seem to get in less trouble, and now trouble includes too many hours on screens, are the kids that have a passion for something outside of school. Hopefully school is a passion, but it isn't always. But at least that they're doing school and they're approaching their education in a positive way. But I think extracurricular activities are very important. I think building relationships with kids at this age is crucial. Have those hard conversations before they get a girlfriend or boyfriend, before they start dating, before they start driving. Build those relationships, because if you have those relationships, high school is easier. Those teen years are easier because your kid will be more inclined to open up to you, and they want you involved in their lives. So I know I've simplified middle school right there, but I go in my book, I go into great detail about, different areas of parenting middle schoolers. But and it also has a lot of information about what is normal and what isn't normal. And what I mean by that is maybe when you need to get professional help for your child, either medically or, a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So it kind of gives parents a little frame of reference based on, a lot of years of working with middle schoolers.
I mean, so your book, I don't even know if I said the title, Creating the Balance, Parenting Through the Middle School Years. It's available on Amazon. We'll talk more about it later, but it's really great that you had that moment back when you first became a counselor, because you were in that unique situation where you have this little child and you're working with middle schoolers. Most everyone does not have that experience when they're looking at their little baby. So you had that aha moment where you were like, wait a minute, there's something here. There's something that changes as they grow up. And what is it? And the fact that you've pinpointed that and then put a lot of pointers in it along the way, I think is invaluable, because it's not, we say it all the time, there's no, you're not born and they give you a manual for parenting. Sure, we can go out there and research and find our resources, but it's not like we're born and they say, oh, by the way, you're really going to start hating your kids around 12, 13, and then, they don't send you home with that knowledge so you can have any kind of heads up. It just happens. Their hormones hit. And I think you explained it beautifully to where they're colliding with who they want to be. And it's kind of like they look at their parents as getting in the way of that.
Yeah, that's true.
They kind of are like, oh, you're getting in the way of my independence here. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm here, you're here because of me. And then it's like, and then the battle occurs,
Right.
the swords come out and the battle occurs. Yeah. So
I
I think that that's exactly how people perceive it, is what you said, where people say, you're just telling me that I need to concede, but you're not. You're saying you need to understand where they're at developmentally. That's a
I
huge shift.
I think that's key. I mean, there's a huge difference between a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. Huge. And even in childhood, 6 months is an enormous amount of time. I mean, I see the evolution of kids go through the different stages of middle school. So it's usually sixth, seventh, and eighth. And in my case, they're in the same school, so they're not necessarily going into a big middle school from a smaller elementary school, although I have worked in that situation as well. But I think sixth grade is when they kind of start and they change, and the girls are taller than the boys, and they go through a little bit of an awkward stage. And then in seventh grade, even from the beginning of the school year in August to like now we're in February, so we're over halfway through the school year, you see the kids changing. So I have a kind of a little funny story. So at my school, I stand at the front gate in the morning, and I have almost 600 students. So I say good morning, several hundred times. And I always kind of chuckle because maybe 10% of the kids say good morning back, or maybe a little bit of eye contact or a grunt. And a lot of the younger children will say something like, "Oh, Mrs. Diamond, I like your dress," or "Oh, I like your glasses," or whatever. And it's so cute. And then the middle school kids, they don't even look at you. It's like you are invisible. And, these same kids who came in my office to talk my ear off 3, 4 years ago are now like, they won't even look up. They come in and they're on their phone, and they won't even look at you. And I kind of chuckle because I just keep saying good morning, good morning, good morning, and they don't greet me. But all of that is just the age and what they're going through, and that their peers are so important to them. But for parents, I kind of remind them that this is a great time to remember grades are not the most important thing. They don't, as long as the effort is there and they're building good work ethic and maybe study skills um, and good habits, that is more important than the grade. Because colleges, if they're going to college, they don't look at your middle school transcript unless maybe you have a dual enrollment class. But other than that, that'll be on the high school transcript. But they don't look at middle school report cards. It doesn't really matter if they forget their homework in fourth grade. So I think it is a good idea. And we all want to kind of fix things for our kids and rescue our kids, but let them fail it. Let them fail. And they learn more from failure than they do from success. If you just always get everything and you always win everything, you're really not learning a lesson. I mean, if you think about that in our lives, the biggest growth comes after failure, and people who are very successful failed a lot to get there. So the message is just to encourage your kids to keep going. They can change courses, they can change paths, but just to keep going and learn from their failures. And also, one of the big things I've noticed is friendships change in middle school. Maybe the kids that were your best friends in elementary school, you just don't have that much common interest with them anymore. And that's okay. That is okay. When kids were little, another thing I hear a lot from parents is they want their middle school kids to be friends with the children of their friends. And sometimes they're not. And that's okay too. Maybe now they don't like them anymore, or they just don't want to be around them anymore. They feel the
Yeah.
pressure. So they want to make their own friendships and they're trying to figure out who they are,
Hmm.
and their relationships are a huge part of that. And they still need parental guidance. So, it's that's why I called my book Creating the Balance, because it is
Yeah.
about parenting is a huge balance. I mean, that's what it is. It's figuring out when to speak and when not to speak. Um, to back off and when to jump in. But my point is to try not to fix things for them and rescue. If they forget their homework, what's going to happen? Are they going to fail the grade? Don't run home and bring it back. Let them experience the consequence of it. Let them serve the detention or whatever. You know, don't go in and fight their battles for them, and understand they're not always telling us as parents everything. They're not. Trust me, they're as they're not.
Yeah, it's because they want their parents to see the very best version of them, so they're going to create that best version of them to tell them.
And that is human nature.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you know,
Don't we
most
do
people.
the same thing? Like, what are we going to walk into our boss and tell them about the failures we did? I doubt it. Like,
Right. We're
you
not
know,
that.
right, right. I think that that's it too. Like, oh well, they lied. They didn't tell me the full story. Well, maybe they're just that's part of their autonomy as well. They're like, maybe I don't need to tell the full story here. And so, yeah, it's crazy though because I find that with all of that being so true, uh they still need their parents, and their parents need to know that without the good morning, without the same feeling that they used to have. Like, the parents need to just know it in their heart that they need them, and they don't need to have that validation during that time of their life so much because they might not notice it. That's what's coming up to me as I'm thinking about what you're telling us.
Exactly. And it's okay. It's okay to meet them on their terms for a lot of it. Maybe not everything. Maybe there's something you need them to do, like go visit their grandparents or whatever. Don't make everything a battle, but it's okay to kind of meet them on their own terms and hear them and listen to them instead of always talking at them, and take those opportunities that are just those small things, like you're driving them to practice in the car and they've got the headphones on. Maybe have a little take the headphones out for 10 minutes and have a conversation and listen to them. How was your day? And they may say nothing, how was school? Fine, all that, what they do,
Yep.
but just to hear them, because some kids may take that opportunity, and whatever they're talking about, listen. If they're talking about their sports team or their drama tryouts, or their friend, what their friend had for lunch, whatever it is, listen to that story, because it may lead to something very important. Instead of getting our questions in, well, what about this? And what about the English test? And what about that? Hear what they're saying. And it kind of resists the temptation of, the Inquisition. And I'm guilty too.
Oh my gosh.
We all do it. But I'm just saying that, in terms of
That's
what I'm
such good
from
advice.
kids, the kids are telling me, my parents don't listen. They often say that to me. And they'll tell me something really juicy. And I'll say, oh, did you tell your mom that? And they're like, oh, I can't talk to her. But they can talk to me because I'm just objective, and I'm not their mom.
Mm.
Um, so, I think that's important to take those little opportunities, whether you're folding the laundry or you're emptying the dishwasher, those little things in the house that you're just doing that you have to do. And your kid comes in and wants to talk, turn off the TV, get off the phone, and hear them, even if it means to stop what you're doing and hear what they're saying. So take every opportunity you can to build those relationships during middle school, because once they get in high school, they're going to date, they're going to drive, they're going to want to do all kinds of things that we never thought of when they were. So my book is called Creating the Balance, Parenting Through the Middle School Years, and it's 15 chapters on different aspects of raising middle school kids. It's largely based on school issues. Talks about preparing for middle school, finding the right school,
It has a lot of information about how to navigate home issues, school issues. It talks about getting ready for high school, just peers, and when to get professional help, just all kinds of issues dealing with this age group from about 10 to 14 years old. Um, I kind of wanted it to be a reference guide. So you could read one chapter if something comes up, and then or you can read it cover to cover from beginning to end, or you could just, use it as a reference guide for something specific if you're struggling with one aspect of parenting. And it's really written from a down to earth perspective, and just as a mom and a counselor, and kind of like just me talking to, or having a conversation, that kind of thing. It's very
Yeah, I mean, it's
practical.
kind of like the emails that you would send out, which I think is so cool. It's kind of like, here's what you would send out if you were like, hey, my parents need to know this. And then you just get it out there. So it's like, it feels personal, which I really like. I love it.
Thank you. And that was my approach, and a lot of it is recycled things that I have used as a counselor
Yeah.
for
You're like,
all
this was
these years.
good. It needs to get out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a long form of it. Absolutely. But it's available on Amazon, and you can follow me. I have two Instagram accounts.
Okay.
School Counseling Balance is for educators, and where I connect with school counselors. And Middle School Parenting is my parenting account. And I also have a website. It's Louise Hajjar Diamond, LOUISEHAJJAR Diamond, DIAMOND.com. And that's it.
Yeah. And also, any of you that go on Teachers Pay Teachers, you have a ton of cool resources over there as well, right?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do have Teacher Pay Teacher, a store on Teachers Pay Teachers. It's called School Counseling Balance. And I have some resources from pre-K to eighth grade, parenting resources. I also have some simple lessons that I've used over the years. They're everything. I've never really had a curriculum, so I wrote everything. So it's just very simple. Most of them are 1 to 2 pages long. Very practical, and there are some that are free, so handouts if you need them, um, on the Teacher Pay Teacher store.
Yeah, I so appreciate that because we're all in this together. And I think that, we just need to be able to have a heart to say that it's not easy being a parent. It's not easy helping kids in this age group, no matter what, or whether you're a principal, teacher, anybody. And so sometimes we just have to sit back and say, you know what, let's help each other out. Let's be in this together. And I really feel like you give that vibe to all of us. And I want to say thank you for doing that because I know we need that so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's just, no one has all the answers, and we're all in this together, like you said. And parenting is hard, and sometimes we need to take a little break and a little breather and support each other, because it is a rocky road, and there's no one size fits all for any of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's knowing your kid, and doing what you need to do in the moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, get the book. Anybody who's listening, it's just good for a reference. I'm so glad that I have it. And I've already referred it to a couple of my sixth grade parents just this week. We had a situation where we're dealing with some the sixth graders are getting to that age, and the whole classroom is just expressing themselves in ways that they shouldn't. And a couple of the parents, it's so funny, it's so apropos of what you talked about. A couple of the parents have known each other since kindergarten, so it's tough because they've known each other a really long time, and now there's these conflicts.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect situation to step back and say, you know what, these things are going to happen during these years, and it's a perfect time to reach out and get a little extra guidance, rather than leaning on our own maybe emotional state at the time, or
Right.
everything that our kid says getting, it's like, oh my gosh, my child's upset. And it just kind of gives us some peace. So I appreciate it a lot.
Oh,
And
one
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for school counselors out there or educators, if you send me a private message on Instagram, I can send you some flyers for the book, and they're great for parent-teacher conferences, parent nights, things like that. So if you're interested,
Yeah.
I will send you some free flyers.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, this has been so cool. I mean, I just have been wanting to get together with you for a while since we've both kind of been friends on Instagram. So hopefully we'll be able to meet face to face at a conference or we'll come together somewhere.
That would be great.
Are you are you going to the national conference this year?
I haven't thought about it yet. My school doesn't pay for it at all.
Ugh,
I would like to do one day. It definitely
yeah.
is on my professional bucket list.
Well, it always comes up in the summer, which is great. But
Yeah,
I mean, we have a lot going on in the summer too. It's our time, right?
right.
So, but yeah, thank you so much. And I'm glad that we can just both kind of now be joining together ourselves on both on opposite sides of the United States, just doing this work. And yeah, anybody who wants to reach out, whether you're a counselor and you want to DM, and even the parents, I'm sure they can DM you and just kind of get that extra added support. And I guess it's time for us to say goodbye. We'll have to get together in a few years and talk
Absolutely.
about a new subject.
Thank you so much, Cher.
Of
Have a great day.
course. You
Okay, take
too.
care. Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.